The first sign of trouble wasn't a gunshot, or a shriek, or the thud of an explosion. It was the silence, an unnerving, total, vacuum-like silence that choked the radio. For the men of Ghost Squad, a four-man SEAL team deep behind enemy lines, this was the sound of everything going wrong. They were pinned down in a narrow alleyway in a city built of ancient mud bricks, a maze of impossible angles and crumbling shadows. They had been tasked with a sensitive retrieval, a data cache hidden in a subterranean bunker. It was supposed to be a surgical op. It had become a slaughter. The ambush had been perfectly executed. A flashbang had cooked off in the small space, leaving three of the four men with a disorienting, high frequency ringing in their ears. Now, the enemy had them locked down, a steady rain of small arms fire chipping away at the fragile walls they were cowering behind. The team leader, a stoic veteran with the call sign Spartan, gritted his teeth as a round ricocheted off the wall inches from his face. "Ghost 2, you good," he rasped into his comms. "Just static." The communication blackout wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated move. The enemy had a sophisticated jammer somewhere nearby, blanketing the area in a communications dead zone. Their only link to the outside world, a satellite uplink on a modified antenna, was a fragile, temperamental thing. Spartan knew they were on the clock. He had a brief 2-minute window to punch through the jamming and get a message out. After that, the enemy would sweep the alley and it would be all over. He held a small, black device in his hand, a beacon for a last-ditch airstrike. He had used it before. It was the final play, the one you made when you were out of time and out of options. As the sound of an approaching vehicle echoed down the alley, Spartan knew his 2 minutes were up. He slammed his fist on the button. The small device glowed, and a single, desperate signal screamed into the heavens. Miles above the dust and chaos, through a thick layer of churning storm clouds, Captain Althea Echo Vance was fighting a different kind of battle. She wasn't on the ground trading fire. She was in the air trading insults. Her flight lead, a veteran pilot with a chest full of ribbons and an ego to match, was on her about her trim. It was a subtle thing, the way her F-35 Lightning II wasn't flying perfectly straight, but it was enough to draw his criticism. "Echo, you're flying like you're on a joyride. Tighten it up. We're not playing in the sandbox." Althea's eyes narrowed behind her visor. She was an exceptional pilot, a natural, but she was new to this squadron. The legacy of her family name in the Air Force was both a blessing and a curse. It got her in the door, but it also painted a target on her back. The other pilots, all men, called her legacy behind her back. It was a quiet mockery, a dismissal of her talent. They saw her as a child playing in a parent's sandbox. She ignored it, focused on her instruments, and kept her plane steady. The storm was a beast. It was a roiling mass of black and gray, shot through with lightning that seemed to tear the very fabric of the sky. Her F-35 was a marvel of technology, but even it was being buffeted by the high winds and turbulence. Her comms buzzed, then crackled to life with an emergency signal. The beacon. Althea's heart hammered against her ribs. She was the closest asset. She keyed her mic, her voice calm and steady despite the adrenaline surging through her. "Copy that command." "Echo is en route." Her flight lead was not amused. "Echo, stand by, I'll handle it." Althea didn't wait for a response. She banked hard, her F-35 a silver flash against the black clouds, peeling away from her flight lead and heading into the storm. She was alone now, just her and the mission. She pushed the throttle forward, her jet screaming toward the emergency signal. As she descended, the weather became even more violent. Rain hammered against her cockpit, and the lightning strikes were so close she could feel the heat. She was flying blind, relying solely on her instruments and her own instincts. On the ground, Spartan's hope was a fragile thing. He hadn't heard anything, but he knew the beacon had transmitted. He was holding onto a sliver of hope, a desperate prayer that someone was coming. The sound of the enemy vehicle was getting closer, the rumble of a heavy engine on cobblestones. He peeked around the corner, his heart sinking. An armored personnel carrier, a hulking beast of steel and weapons, was blocking the end of the alley. This wasn't just an ambush. This was a choke point, a tactical masterstroke. The enemy knew they were trapped and they were bringing in the heavy hitters to finish the job. A heavy machine gun mounted on the APC swiveled, its barrel a dark, menacing eye. Spartan knew that when that gun opened up, their flimsy wall would be turned to dust. His comms crackled to life, a garbled sound, then a voice cut through the static. It was female and it sounded younger than he expected. "Ghost Squad, this is Echo. I am above your position. Give me targets." Spartan's face hardened. He had expected a hardened veteran, a maverick, or a viper. He got an Echo. The name itself sounded like a ghost, a whisper. He made a subtle, dismissive gesture to his team. He couldn't afford to be picky, but the sound of her voice, so calm and controlled, felt like a slap in the face in their current hell. He didn't have time for a rookie. He keyed his mic. "Echo, this is Spartan. We have 3 enemy positions. A machine gun nest on the roof of the building on your left, a sniper in the bell tower on your right, and an APC blocking the exit. We need multiple passes. Be advised, we're close to all targets." He gave her the coordinates, his voice tight with tension. He was expecting her to confirm, to acknowledge the request for multiple passes. He was expecting the sound of a jet screaming by, a single bomb dropping, and then the need to wait for her to circle back around. Instead, she said something that made his blood run cold. "Copy. 3 positions, 1 run. Stand by for inbound." He knew what that meant. She was going to try a single pass to hit all 3 targets. It was a tactic that was considered impossible, a thing of legends. It would require perfect timing, an impossible flight path, and a level of precision that was unheard of. Spartan closed his eyes, bracing for the worst. He wasn't just concerned about the targets anymore. He was concerned about the friendly fire. He was convinced she would miss, and when she did, she would take them with her. He couldn't stop her. The comms were one way now, a channel for her to transmit, not for them to respond. He heard the sound of her jet now, a low, ominous rumble that was quickly turning into a deafening roar. He couldn't see her. The storm clouds were too thick, the rain too heavy, but he could feel her. He could feel the pressure wave as she broke through the sound barrier, a shockwave that rattled their very bones. He saw the APC's gun barrel swivel, its crew looking up into the chaos. The pilot, a young man, was laughing, convinced that no one could possibly be coming for them in this weather. Suddenly, a flash of silver, not one but a ghost-like shimmer that seemed to cut through the rain. The F-35 was a blur of motion, an impossible ballet of speed and precision. The jet wasn't flying a straight line. It was flying a serpentine path, a deadly dance that weaved and twisted through the narrow canyons of the city. The wings dipped and banked in a way that defied physics, a single, fluid motion that was both terrifying and beautiful. Spartan watched, his jaw slack, as the jet released its payload. Not a bomb, but 3 small, almost invisible missiles, each a laser-guided whisper of death. One shot up into the bell tower, a silent puff of smoke and a shower of brick dust. The second shot arced down into the machine gun nest, a precise explosion that silenced the gunfire forever. The third shot, the most impossible of all, was aimed at the APC. It didn't hit the main body, which would have put them at risk. It hit the gun turret, a surgical strike that disabled the weapon and left the crew stunned and unharmed. Then, just like that, the jet was gone, swallowed by the storm clouds. The silence returned. This time, it wasn't the silence of death. It was the silence of awe. Spartan keyed his mic, his voice a tremor of disbelief. "Echo, did you copy that?" The comms were still a bit garbled, but the static was gone. He heard her voice again, calm and professional. "Spartan, this is Echo. All targets neutralized. Stand by for exfil." He didn't respond. He couldn't. He looked at his team, all of them wide-eyed and stunned. The machine gun fire was gone, the sniper was gone, and the APC was a smoking, useless hulk. They were safe. He looked up at the sky, at the churning, rain-soaked clouds that had just saved their lives. The name Echo seemed to hang in the air, a whisper of a legacy he had only just started to understand. It wasn't a call sign. It was a tribute. He realized that this wasn't just a pilot. This was a daughter, a warrior carrying the weight of a legend on her shoulders, and she had just proved to them all that she was a legend in her own right. The mocking tone, the dismissive attitude, it was all gone now. He saw a pilot, a ghost, an echo of a promise kept. He looked at his team, all of them finally able to breathe and then back up at the sky. His respect was no longer a question of rank but a thing of pure, unadulterated awe. He had never seen anything like it, not in his 20 years in the field. He had heard stories of impossible pilots, of men who bent the rules of combat and gravity to achieve the impossible. He had dismissed them as tall tales, legends told around a campfire. But now he had seen one. He had seen a ghost in the storm, a flicker of silver and a whisper of death that had saved their lives. He thought of her name, Echo. He wondered if it was a family name, a tribute to a fallen father. He had seen pilots who flew for honor, for country, for a paycheck. He had never seen a pilot who flew for a ghost. He took a deep breath and his voice was thick with emotion when he keyed his mic again. Echo, this is Spartan. We're all good. Thank you. We owe you one. He heard her laugh, a soft, professional sound that somehow managed to reach through the comms and into his soul. Spartan, no debt is owed, it's what we do. And then she was gone. The comms were silent again, but this time it was the silence of a job well done. The silence of a storm broken, of a legacy earned, of an impossible mission completed. Spartan and his team began to move, their steps filled with a new confidence, a new lease on life. They were a team of ghosts, but they had just been saved by a ghost. And in the history of the SEALs, in the hallowed halls of their shared stories, a new legend had just been born. A legend of a pilot, a woman, an echo. The sun broke through the clouds, a ray of golden light that shone down on the battlefield, on the smoking hulk of the APC, and on the 4 men who had just been given a second chance. The sky was no longer a symbol of chaos and death, but of salvation. The silence was no longer a harbinger of doom, but a moment of peace. The name Echo, once a subtle insult, was now a thing of reverence. It was a name that would be told in hushed tones around the campfires, a name that would be passed down from one generation of soldiers to the next. The legacy was no longer a shadow, but a light, a beacon of hope in a world of shadows. And somewhere far above the clouds, a single F-35 banked hard, a ghost in the machine, a whisper on the wind, a legend in the making.